and we bring them in and we walk them in refueling outages in April and October. We walk them right into the containment building and we show them how safe it is. We talk to them about how it works. We show them the fuel. We're fully open with folks because we don't have anything to hide.
The gravity of the time is such that every new avenue of peace, no matter how dimly discernible, should be explored. Never before in history has so much hope for so many people been gathered together in a single organization. You will provide a great share of the wisdom, of the courage, and the faith which can bring to this world lasting peace for all nations and happiness and well-being for all men.
Hello, Greg. Thank you so much for joining me on the Heads of Nuclear podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on here.
Hi, Lou. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been a big fan for a while, so it's great to be in the chair.
It's nice for you to officially become a Titan. So before we get into our very, very good conversation that we have laid out today, could you give a background to the audience about who you are and how you got started in the nuclear industry?
You bet. So I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Communications and External Affairs for the Palo Verde Generating Station, which is the largest producer of clean carbon-free electricity in the United States. Just happens to be nuclear. I started in nuclear it's been 15 years. And, it's funny how a chance encounter just changes your life. And I was at Oklahoma State University, an engineering student, and happened to meet a manager from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission at an internship fair. And we struck up a conversation. And a few weeks later, I flew out to Atlanta to their regional office for an interview. And the gentleman's office was in the top floor of the federal high-rise in downtown. And from his office window, you could see the headquarters of let's say, a major global beverage distributor. And he gave me what may be the best locker room speech I've ever experienced. And he said, you could work in that building as an engineer and you could make a product that everyone in the world knows and thanks you for and enjoys. And you see them holding the can in commercials. And you get all of this glory and all of this money. And at the end of the day, all you do for a living is make brown sugar water. And it's funny, but it really struck me. And he went on to talk about, at that point, from a regulator's perspective, the fact that you could come work in this building, the NRC, and ensure the safety and ensure reliable electricity and no one's ever going to know who you are and they're not going to know what you do, but you're making a product that is fundamental to society and to living and economic growth. And that just really, really resonated with me. And so I interned with the NRC for a couple of years and just loved the nuclear business, loved getting out to plants and understanding the technology. And after that experience, I wanted to be a little closer to the product than maybe a regulator can be or should be. So I entered the utility business after that. But I'm so grateful for a gentleman's name was Chuck Ogle with the NRC that just introduced me into a business that's made my livelihood and been so incredibly rewarding. And now I get to communicate on its behalf.
That is an amazing story, actually. And I'm curious, at that point, did you already have an idea of what nuclear was? Did you already have an opinion about nuclear when you talked to him for the first time at this internship fair? Did you already have a background to it?
I didn't. I was ignorant to it. I knew the electric business. My grandpa had worked for a utility in Oklahoma, and so I knew all about the fundamentals of electricity. But nuclear and the regulatory end of things were very foreign to me. But I just wanted to make the introduction and learn something, right? And it wasn't, whether or not I got an internship, it was something interesting and intriguing. And at that time, this was early 2000s. Nuclear renaissance was sort of approaching. It was in some of the policy discussions, but it wasn't, climate change certainly wasn't a topic of conversation then. So nuclear wasn't really in the lexicon.
And I'm actually curious as well, because now you work mainly communications, but your career actually started out in engineering. At what stage did you make that transition, and how was the transition for you from going from engineering roles to have to be mainly communications and speaking, as you said, for an industry where many people don't really thank you for the product that you make?
Sure. I don't know that there was any one particular transition point. As an engineer, the things that I loved the most about that job were, coming up with solutions, coming up with ideas, and then advocating for those ideas. And whether it's coming up with a solution or advocating for it, both of those are best done as a team. So the other thing I really enjoyed doing was building effective teams and surrounding myself with people that were better and smarter than me, that together we could go out and deliver a solution and advocate for it. So in that regard, what I do today isn't really different from engineering, right? I'm still advocating for a solution. I still have a great team around me that I get to do that with. But the transition just kind of occurred over time, and I moved from engineering into regulatory affairs. And I joke sometimes that I did that because I wanted to be a lawyer but didn't want to go to law school. And regulatory affairs is, you're engaged in the law and regulations, and there's a little bit of negotiation and a little bit of figuring out, how we meet some esoteric words on a page. And so that is, another step toward communication. And in that role, we were, communicating with the regulator, whether it was on broad policy or on, some specific plant issue. And then out of that experience, I got the chance to go work for the Nuclear Energy Institute in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years. And that was on a rotation. And so Palo Verde, an Arizona public service company, allowed me to go to Washington and kind of lent me to an industry cause for a couple of years. And that moved me another step closer to communications and really understanding what broad advocacy is about. And, spending time, NEI has such talented people in government relations and regulatory affairs and communications that really advocate for the industry. And so I did that for a couple of years and got the chance to come back to Palo Verde in this role, still working with engineers, still working with a largely, technical staff of 2,000 just fine people at Palo Verde. So I draw on my engineering experience every day, right? And it's still at the core of who I am, and it's at the core of what we do as an organization. But to get to now communicate on behalf of that technical crew is really a privilege.
And I'd like to hear about the Palo Verde generating station that you work at, because as you said before, it's pretty much the largest in terms of generating capacity. What is it like working there, and just how much of importance do you see the mission in that piece of infrastructure?
From an Arizona and Southwest perspective, we're critical. And so Palo Verde produces electricity for about 4 million people in 4 states. So we have owners and users of our electricity in Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, and the El Paso area of West Texas. So it's big. So, working on behalf of that facility, a facility of that size has some challenges, right? And one, to your point, is the large size of the infrastructure. Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey referred to us as the jewel of the Southwest, in that, we provide electricity. It's 109 degrees today in Phoenix. Electricity is important for light bulbs. Electricity is really important for air conditioning when it's 109 degrees in Arizona and New Mexico and Southern California. So our mission as an infrastructure is critical, right, to provide that reliable electricity. Our size introduces some unique complexities. I mentioned that we have 7 owners, so that means we're in 4 states from a policy perspective. California looks at electricity and electric markets very different than Arizona or New Mexico or Texas. Our size also means we have a lot of people. We have 2,000 employees that do incredible work in operations. We have some of the finest craftsmen. We have engineers. We have support staff of HR, communications, financial, you name it, that you'd expect to see in a large organization like that. And so engaging and aligning that workforce, communicating to them about the needs of the plant, connecting them with each other, and connecting them with this broad purpose or cause that nuclear serves is a fun, complex challenge as well.
And you mentioned about the workforce, like 2,000 people. That is a very large group of people who are working in basically on the same mission. And how important do you think it is for those kind of people to become like advocates in their own small communities for the kind of work they do and for the nuclear community in general?
Oh, it's so important, and it's increasingly important. As I refer to nuclear as a cause a lot, and that's fairly new. Nuclear has been a technology and a business for 50, 60 years. It's a cause now. And it's a cause that, we ask our employees to take up in spaces where they're comfortable. And I joke that if any of our people want to go into any, schoolhouse, firehouse, or Waffle House and tell the story of nuclear power and of Palo Verde, we want them to do that. And so arming them with the right tools, with the right messages, making people comfortable. There's an old joke that anyone that went to engineering school heard, that the way you can tell an extroverted engineer is they stare at your shoes when they're talking to you and not their own. And, it's a bit of a stereotype and a bit of a mean joke, but it's true. And some folks just aren't comfortable in advocacy and in communicating in, short messages and trying to influence someone pretty directly. So we work to make them comfortable at that. But I think it's incredibly important for the future of our industry. And we have some local experience with that at Palo Verde as well. Across the country, across the world, different states, different countries are looking at decarbonizing the electric sector and how they do that from a policy perspective. A unique thing about the United States, and especially the further west you get in the United States, is participatory democracy becomes a little easier. It becomes easier for a group of citizens to put something on the ballot for consideration. So in Arizona, we have it's not super easy, but it's fairly easy for a like-minded group of people to go out and gather some signatures and get an idea on the ballot to amend the state constitution. And in 2016, we had a group of citizens that did just that, and they it was Prop 127 on the ballot to require 50% of Arizona's electricity to come from renewable sources. And it went into great detail. Again, this would amend the state constitution, a 100-year-old document, to include technologies that they found acceptable to meet this requirement. And nuclear was excluded from that explicitly. And so those 2,000 people that I get to work with, we took that personally. We took that as an existential, threat to what we do and how we do it. We're behind the idea of clean energy, obviously, right? We do that for a living. We love that. But we didn't feel like this was the right way to get a clean energy that balanced affordability, reliability, various technologies, diversity of supply. So we had to turn our employee workforce into advocates in a hurry, and still run the plant well, still focus on safe and reliable operation through the summer of 2016, but also, to your point, get out in the community and talk to people about what we do. That's an increasing focus for my team and for our station. So out of that, which, by the way, Prop 127 was defeated, roughly 70%, 30%. Again, not because clean energy is a bad idea, not because wind and solar are bad, but because the right balance is important. The right balance of different clean technologies is important. The right balance of affordability, reliability, clean energy, all of that's important. And we thought that there were better ways. And so we've come out as a company with a clean energy commitment that we think is better, that includes nuclear in Arizona as the backbone for clean energy, as the reliable technology, the existing technology. And then we layer on solar, we layer on wind where we can, and we have room to layer on technologies that don't even exist today, right? The next generation of battery storage, the next generation of solar plus storage. Who knows? By the time we fully decarbonize in 2050, we aren't exactly sure what that technology portfolio looks like, but we know that science will take us there. So it's a bit of an aspiration.
And you mentioned this energy portfolio, and I just find it very interesting that when people say that they want clean energy generation capacity and they immediately relate that to renewables and leave nuclear out of the conversation, it kind of causes you to wonder how much of a gap in knowledge there is, because you would think that if the objective was to generate clean electricity that could cater to a lot of homes, as the power plant is doing right now, they would want nuclear to be part of that solution. So do you see this gap in knowledge and in terms of people's understanding of the problem is and how they understand the energy mix and what the grid system actually has to do to provide electricity to their homes in a stable capacity?
I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an enormous challenge, and one that anybody that works in our industry, whether they work at a power plant or in a policy body or in an advocacy body, has to come to the table and be a part of that team and that messaging solution. You asked about kind of what we do to go out and inform and educate folks, and we have found that it's it's a balance, right? And you have to sometimes meet people where they are, and you have to go have a conversation where they are and at their level, right? And if that means that they're an energy novice, you don't sit down and overwhelm them with, in the first 5 minutes, let me tell you how the nuclear plant down the road works, right? And unpack thermal neutrons and all of that. We go at it from meeting people where they are. And one of the interesting things about nuclear is no matter where you are, politically or from a policy mindset, I probably have something about nuclear that's of value to you. And so if climate change is of incredible importance to you, that one's obvious, right? I can bring massive amounts of clean, reliable electricity to the table, and we can talk about that. If national security is an issue for you, we can talk about, domestic fuel supply. We can talk about the importance of using American technology, not only here in the United States, but abroad. If you're a veteran and you like veterans issues, I can talk to you about how a third of those 2,000 employees are veterans that have served their country in uniform and now continue to serve their communities as essential workers in the environment we're in today, but producing an essential service like electricity. So there's a conversation starter really for any of those. Meeting people where they're at. And then we like to bring people where we're at too. And one of the biggest challenges in COVID-19 for us has been that we've suspended our tour program. In 2019, we brought over 1,000 people into Palo Verde, into the gates, into this, secret, secure, kind of mysterious facility, right? And we bring them in and we walk them in refueling outages in April and October. We walk them right into the containment building and we show them how safe it is. We talk to them about how it works. We show them the fuel. We're fully open with folks because we don't have anything to hide. And nuclear has been a little silent and a little secretive for so long. And some of the best brands and the best technologies are out there promoting themselves and talking about themselves. And so nuclear is kind of new to that game. But we have found just tremendous success and frankly, tremendous satisfaction in getting to share what we do and our staff and our technology and these big machines with people. And that makes a difference. Somebody comes out and they spend a day with us, they get a tour, they get to meet maybe 20 or 30 of those 2,000 people, and they walk away knowing that that's a really well-run plant. They can put a name and a face and an experience with the people that assure the safety and reliability of that plant. It gives you comfort. They take it home to the dinner table. They talk to their families about it. And the word spreads, right? So we do kind of person by person outreach that way. We do advertisements in Phoenix and Albuquerque. We're on billboards. We sponsor different events just like, any other big company in the community would do. That's also fairly new to us. But anytime we can engage someone in a conversation about the value of what we do for our community and the broader value of nuclear for, a healthy environment and economic growth, we're going to take that opportunity and we're going to attempt to enable and encourage all of our folks to do the same.
And as you said, it's quite unfortunate you can't do this anymore, but I'm sure you know this, how important it is to have that open stream of communication where people feel that it's not just something that is a mysterious thing in the corner over there that has like huge gates and security guards patrolling, but something that they feel is part of the community. And I'm just curious, have you had any kind of like personal stories where you see somebody just come in and just be completely surprised from what their expectations was of what you guys did at the power station and what they actually saw, and then when they see the people working and they realize that this is just normal people providing an essential service to their community?
We get that. That's pretty well the consistent feedback we get from all of our visitors and folks that come in for tours. We bring in elected leaders, we bring in business leaders, we bring in a lot of educators, we bring in a lot of teachers because we want to, pay our STEM knowledge forward and also, take our message to a variety of different ages and different backgrounds. We also, frankly, will invite people to come see us that aren't inclined to like us. And we'll bring in, some of the environmental groups that are, among the last to come around to nuclear, right? Or they have issues with things they've heard or things they experienced 20 years ago. And we have the conversations that we need to have with them, right? And we would rather show than tell. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then getting to walk through a picture, getting to experience it, getting to talk to the people, that's worth, an infinite amount of words. So we bring people in, we tell them a little bit, and then we go show them a lot. And it's changed minds, and it's built relationships that we can go back to, such as during Prop 127, when we needed, some people to help us and to understand, and we could go back to them and say, hey, you came out in, October of last year, and you toured with us, and you met, this person and that person, and what they do, how good they are at their jobs. We want them to keep their jobs. We want them to keep serving you. Can you help us? And we were able to activate some of our friends, for lack of a better word, coming out of some of those tour experiences. So each one touches us and makes us feel like we're doing the right thing. Even if, I mentioned we bring in, we invite some folks that may not be inclined to like us or agree with us. Even if they walk out agreeing with us a little more or being a little more open, that's still a win. That's still a rock that we moved to advance the cause of nuclear, and we think that's pretty important.
And just going back to Prop 127 that you mentioned before, and of course, the Palo Verde has a huge place in the Arizona state that it's based. How do you see the power plant working with the government in the future for the clean energy plan? Because the state has actually put a lot of other commitments out that they want to. There's obviously a will for people that they want to take this thing seriously, that they want to have an action plan for climate change, and they want to have clean electricity generated. So how important do you see the role of Palo Verde playing in the future of the state, and just in helping it with this clean energy generation plan for the future?
Of course. We think it's incredibly important, and Palo Verde right now is licensed to operate through the mid 2040s, and we have preserved the option, and we make our investment decisions with an eye to operate through the mid 2060s. Licensed nuclear operating licenses in the United States are issued at first for 40 years and then 20-year increments after that. So we have our first extra 20 years, and we'll be going hopefully for an extra 20 years. So we think the longevity is there. The machine, the plants themselves are incredibly well maintained. They're robustly designed, and we continue to improve upon them with the latest technologies. So we think the infrastructure is clearly capable of extending its service life into a decarbonized electric sector in Arizona, and it's the same for plants all across the country. You mentioned working with government, and we do think that's important. And we think those relationships and having people know us, know who we are, know what we do, have come out and seen the facility is incredibly important. One thing that we've done at Palo Verde that's a little unique and a little industry leading is we actually have a nuclear policy group. So I work with our communications team, and we're part of a broader nuclear policy and strategy group that has some other folks like me with engineering backgrounds, some folks with finance backgrounds that work on policy development, on forming those relationships, on engaging in policy development process. And just like if you're operating a solar power company or a wind power company, you're going to have representatives that could come into a room with policymakers or with the public, tell your story, advocate for your cause. We want to do that as well, because we do think that's important. Policy is our success and our future success is based not only on running reliably. That is foundational, right? And for years we have known as good nuclear professionals, run the plant well, run the plant safely. That is our jobs, right? And that continues to be the baseline of our jobs. Our jobs, just like our world now, are a little bit more complex. And it's not just about running the plant well and running the plant safely. It's having those conversations. It's engaging with policymakers and working to make a difference, both as individuals and as a team. So we'll continue to do that, no matter who is elected, no matter kind of what office they're in. We believe in talking to people early. Right? Just like, engineers grow up to become communicators, today's city council person or today's mayor is tomorrow's state representative and then maybe the governor, right? And by the time someone is running for governor, they may not have the time to come spend a full day at Palo Verde. But if we can spend the full day at Palo Verde with a city councilman and form that relationship early, we think that's pretty important.
And we've talked obviously about external outreach, and obviously there's a large importance to have a social license to operate. And as you said, operating efficiently is just a baseline. But I want to go deeper into this policy issue and what the unique policy challenges are, because as you said, you provide electricity to multiple states, and each state has a different view on what they want their energy mix to be in the future and how they want to adapt different sources of generating capacity. So, what are the unique challenges that you find working with Palo Verde in the policy framework?
I'll give you an example of a unique challenge and one that we think we're in the early process of a solution for. In a state like Arizona, solar is pretty popular, right? It's super sunny outside for 300 and some odd days a year. Solar is an incredibly viable and valuable technology here. On a really, really sunny day, we can, with a combination of solar and our other generating assets, we can overproduce, right? So we can have more electricity than we need, let's say from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., just to give you a window. And then later in the day, as the sun's going down, but people are coming home from work, they're ramping up their air conditioners, it's the heat of the day at that 5-6 o'clock sort of time frame. We may need more electricity than solar and those generating combinations can provide. So one fix to that is policy, right? To ensure that you've got the appropriate diverse mix, that you're considering, baseline grid reliability that nuclear provides, and then intermittent renewables and their, economic value and their environmental value on top of that baseline. There's also frankly, some technological solutions to that, and hydrogen is an example and a place where we're excited about and in the early stages on is, I, as a nuclear operator, I don't want to operate my plant less. So if we've got an abundance, an overabundance of electricity between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., I don't want to lower the throttle on the nuclear plant, if you will, right? And maybe back that output down to 90% or 80%. That isn't economic, but I am even more than that on a philosophical level. I am depriving my community and my society of clean, carbon-free energy. So what if, instead of making electricity directly, I use that nuclear energy, that thermal energy, to produce hydrogen? And then later on, when those intermittent resources are gone, I can, reverse the electrolysis process and turn that hydrogen back into electricity. Or maybe I use that hydrogen that I generated from clean nuclear power to help a, natural gas-fired plant down the road, help that gas-fired turbine burn cleaner through burning that hydrogen. We're partnering with the Department of Energy and with Idaho National Labs to research that from an economic perspective, from a technical perspective, and to run a pilot, because that accomplishes that goal of not running the nuclear plant less, but running it differently, right? And being flexible and coming to the table, if you will, with these intermittent resources and with policymakers and saying, nuclear is always a solution. It may look a little different, but there isn't an energy problem that we're not going to try to bring a viable solution for that continues to maximize the value of what we do for those around us.
And just going on that point, because I guess this is more of a philosophical question, but do you see that as the future of energy generation, this integrated system where different parts have to communicate with each other and work together in a way to just make sure that the grid works in a sustainable manner? Is that what you see the future of electric generation as?
Personally, I do. I think that the electric business, like all businesses, is continuing to change, and technology influences that. Society influences that. Customers of any product or commodity or resource are more demanding and more sophisticated, right? And we certainly see that in electricity. So to your point, I think the future of the grid is something that is more distributed, a little more integrated, a little more, it's great to put it as a philosophical question, because I wanted to answer that and say, I think we'll be more thoughtful. And it's not that we don't think about how the grid works now, right? It's this complex machine that thousands of people across the country think about 24/7 to make it work. But I think we'll operate it a little differently. And I think that's a challenge for nuclear, right? And nuclear culturally, in how we run the plants and how we talk to each other, is risk adverse, certainly, and it should be, but we're kind of change adverse too, right? And if we know that this way is proven and it works, we like to continue doing things in that direction. So it requires us to change our culture a little bit, not to become less risk adverse, but to become more open to change and open to that sort of flexibility that's required for that kind of broader, thoughtful, more integrated grid. But I see nuclear as a part of that, right? And I use analogies a lot, and I use the analogy to music sometimes. And, intermittent renewables, wind, solar, some of those, they're like the Spotify's and the streaming services, right? And they're incredibly important. They are in the conversation. They are a great way to go get music. You know what else is a great way to go get music? Classic vinyl records. And nuclear is the vinyl records of the energy business, right? And nuclear is cool again, just like vinyl records are cool again. There's a reliability and a sweet sound that comes out of a vinyl record that you just don't get from a streaming service. We think we provide, something similar to the energy business. So nuclear is going to be there. It's going to be thought about a little differently. We may be doing something, like hydrogen. We may be finding other uses for our energy at certain times of the day or certain parts of the year. In my lifetime, I don't ever want to see an electric grid that's less reliable, especially as long as I continue to live in Arizona. I want those lights and that air conditioner to work. I don't ever want to see a grid that doesn't have a nuke plant attached to it somewhere. So I've made that, my personal mission, and I'm pretty glad I get to share that with a lot of really smart people across the country.
That's very well said. And speaking of flexibility, obviously we can't ignore what's going on in the world right now with the COVID-19 outbreak. And how has Palo Verde kind of reacted to this? Because as you mentioned, this is an essential service. You can't just stop generating electricity for whatever reason. It's something that always has to be functional, safely, and reliably. So how has this affected operations, and what is the outlook right now?
Sure. So we're operating differently, just like any other business or enterprise. It hasn't affected the reliability of operation, so I'll put that out there out front. We have, like I mentioned, about 2,000 people. A little more than half of them we've asked to work from home when they can, right? And so it's not that their work is less essential; it's that their work is less location dependent. Obviously, I'm in my living room today. So my team is still communicating. We're still connecting our employees. We're still advocating on behalf of nuclear, but we're doing that remotely. So are our engineers that can support remotely using technology tools. They're working remotely when they can. But we still have 800 or so operators, craftsmen, support personnel, security. A whole laundry list of folks whose jobs are essential and location dependent. And they're going into work every day. So just like we have a culture of running the plant safely and focusing on, nuclear safety and personal industrial safety and all of those, we focus on health as well. So we have, what I've referred to as social distancing on steroids at the station, and all the things that you see. If you go to a store, you've got people in masks, you've got them separated, you've got designated travel lanes for different folks. We've done the same thing at Palo Verde, as has the nuclear industry across the country. We haven't been spared entirely from COVID-19 cases, but I'll tell you, on a percentage basis, our numbers are much better than most industries. They're much better than the communities where we live. And even when we do have an employee, or a contract partner that contracts COVID, they have gotten that from elsewhere, right? We haven't had a community spread situation in the plant, which is important because so much of our work is teamwork, right? So much of our maintenance work and our operations crews are folks that work together. And so to be able to do that and to maintain health has been a challenge, but one that we have overcome, and pretty proud of that, right? That just like we team up and kind of back to those engineering days, we have great ideas, we advocate for those ideas, and we implement them. We've done that in terms of COVID-19. And the important thing is not the adjustments that we make, behind the curtain, if you will, but what the customers see. And the customers continue to see reliable electricity. And we've taken that, really seriously, right? It's we school kids are at home, adults are working from home. Everybody is a little nervous, you're a little anxious. Imagine how much worse that gets if the power goes out, right? Imagine how much worse just kind of your personal mental health becomes if that just old reliable force in your home is taken away. And so we have taken that really seriously, that our product is maybe more important than ever. And we will do what we do, and we will take the necessary precautions to keep doing it.
I'm sure those 4 million people around the country are very thankful of you, even if they don't know that where most of it is coming from. And,
we're grateful to be serving them, friend.
Kind of looking forward now, obviously we're hoping that the world kind of gets a certain time of normalcy get put in place. But as far as the nuclear industry is concerned, uh, there's a lot of exciting new technology that's been developed. There's a lot of breakthroughs in terms of policy. But for you personally, what do you see as something that really excites you for the future of nuclear? What are you looking forward to?
The people that work in this business and are coming to this business really excite me. And they don't come to this just as a business, they come to it as a cause. And I think just this idea that we have rallied around the cause of nuclear and the contribution of nuclear to the important issue of climate change and to, our environmental goals as society is just important. And it's brought people, folks have entered the nuclear business, to work, whether it's at a utility or in a support role to a plant. They've come because the jobs are secure, they are rewarding, they are, everything you look for in a livelihood. You're contributing to a product that society really needs and cares about. The last, let's say, 5-6 years, the folks that we have hired, no matter whether they're early career, mid-career, they've come to us because they want to work on the cause of clean energy. And so it isn't just the rewarding part of the job when you're at work. It's the value of the product and feeling like you're part of a solution and of a great cause. And that's different, right? And that's a thing I learned when I got to live and work in Washington for a couple of years, is when you work on behalf of a cause, you think differently and you are a little more motivated, and there's a little bit of you're going to put an extra force into your message and an extra bit of discretionary effort in what you do for a living, because it isn't just a job, it isn't just a career, it isn't just a product, it's a cause. And I see that taking off in nuclear, and that opens doors, it opens conversations that I think will benefit us well for the future. I'll give you an example. So kind of in that external outreach space, one thing that we do at Palo Verde every year is we sponsor a teacher education day. So teachers, just like a lot of other professionals, get CEUs, continuing education units, to keep their licenses and their certifications. And so we wanted to provide that. We wanted to be a place where teachers could come for a day or two in the summer. They could learn about energy. They could learn about the grid. They could learn about nuclear energy. We could give them some lessons that they can take back to their classrooms and use for, 5th graders, 8th graders, high school physics students, you name it. And really pay forward that STEM knowledge. And so we did that last week. And like so many things, are in an auditorium, in a laboratory teacher day became a Zoom conference just like this, with about a dozen or so Palo Verde professionals and 200 teachers from across the state of Arizona. And we delivered them some lessons that they could use virtually, if they have to teach virtually for the early part of fall. And we had just some discussions where we brought some of our newest, youngest employees, and they could talk about teachers that inspired them and what inspires them in their work today. And it was so exciting to be able to sit back in this chair and watch this screen and watch some of those new to nuclear employees talk about how inspired they were and in turn inspire others. And as long as we keep bringing in great people into this business and they're willing to go out and share those kind of stories, and they're willing to to do what they need to do to grow professionally and to run the plants well and to run the plants safely, the future is exciting. And I get to be a part of that. I am about the same age actually as Palo Verde. So occasionally I feel a little old, but most days I feel like I got a long runway ahead of me and great places where I can invest, my time and energy. And I have this kind of emotional connection to the plant that way, that we're at the same place, kind of in our life, and Palo Verde and so many other plants like it just have such a bright future if we surround ourselves with the right smart people, and we go out and make the right relationships and we make the right investments. So there's nothing but good things to be excited about, I think.
And just as a final question here, this is more like personal curiosity.
Sure.
As you continue to grow in your own career, what new challenges do you want to tackle? Just in the energy space, in the nuclear energy space with Palo Verde, like what new challenges do you look forward to as you go on with your career?
That is a great question. I love the place where people and technology intersect. And that's what I love about communication. That's what I love about, some of the policy work that we get to do is we may have the math on our side, right? And I can bring in all the calcs and all the diagrams in the world and tell you how the plant works. But if I can't connect you as a policymaker or an influencer or a voter, right? I mean, a citizen can have more power than an elected policymaker in certain situations. And so if I can't bring that technology to you in a way that's meaningful to you, that makes you a part of my cause, then the technology, we're doing it a disservice. So I love any challenge where I get to help marry those two things together. And I think that's increasingly important as we move policy forward. It's important as so many things become more partisan and more divisive, that we find all of the ways that nuclear isn't those things, right? And nuclear is not a Republican solution. It's not a Democrat solution. It's not a progressive solution. It's just a good solution, no matter who you are or where you're coming from. So making sure that we are at those tables and having those conversations, wherever that challenge is, whatever that team looks like, I'm in, and I hope someone lets me do it, because it's just tremendously rewarding and fun. And if you can call your job rewarding and fun, you're in a pretty damn good spot, I think.
I completely agree. Greg Cameron, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasant conversation, and thank you for being here on Tides of Nuclear Podcast. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And initiate at least a new approach to the many difficult problems that must be solved in both private and public conversation if the world is to shake off the inertia imposed by fear and is to make positive progress toward peace.